comes to psychedelic therapies, it doesn't need to be hard, but you do need to do the work. You have to turn inward. You have to face your demons. You have to face your fears. You have to face traumatic experiences to move through them and get to the other side. So yeah, I think there's a growing awareness, and I think on a broader conversation, I think it's a reflection of sort of growing awareness that our move away from spirituality, not necessarily religiosity, but spirituality, thinking that, we're purely rational beings, that we're purely materialists, not a function of soul or connection to like the planet or anything along those lines, has led us astray. And is probably one of the drivers of so much depression and anxiety, because we've just lost a deep connection with what it means to be a human.
Yeah. And I had this conversation with a friend once, because he asked me, he was like, what does it mean to be spiritual? Like, in your definition, he asked me. And I said the best way I can describe it that resonates with me is just a deep connection with self and awareness of myself, and really understanding the driving forces behind patterns and everything. And that's the best way I could describe spirituality, is just reconnecting with self in an honest, pure
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I mean, I like, so I work with a coach out of LA. His name is Erwin Perlman. And he gives this great example to sort of help people think about this, because, in our society, in our very logic, rational driven society, people think in materialist terms, that like, I can feel it, I can touch it, it's real. But he gives the example of, sight. He's like, when you look at something, if you were to cut into a person's optic nerve and look in that optic nerves, you won't see the picture that they're experiencing. It's just electrical signals traveling down the optic nerves, which your brain, through what he calls the sense of imagination, converts into the image that you see. So if our entire experience of reality is just the translation of electrical signals into experience, then inherently we have entire control over that experience. Like, that's spirituality to me, right? Which is like a recognition that, and it's also like consistent with what we're seeing in quantum physics. Not by any stretch am I an expert in quantum physics, though I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
Is that like objective reality doesn't really exist. We live in a perpetual state of uncertainty, and the experience that we have is just a conversion of electrical signals into an experience, and therefore is inherently non-objective, is inherently non-materialist. I don't know, I find that fascinating, and that's how I kind of get a sense of spirituality, is the recognition that so much of what we think is real is just our observation, and that opens up the potential for so much more in this world.
I think it's really philosophical. I've always leaned on etymology, actually. Like, I get mad at people online when they're like, what's spirituality mean to you? And I'm like, well, actually, like, I whip my dictionary out. Like, spiritual, like, something that's spirit is something that it like, the meaning of the word is something that's real but not physical. So you guys are describing the fruits of spirituality, but I would say that the word just kind of reveals itself. Like the ality, like the suffix, it means like the existence of, or pertaining to, so the reality of spirit.
Yeah.
So if someone's in line with the things that are real in their lives, but that are not physical, and that's so much stuff. Like you're saying, like the optic nerve example was perfect, because it's like so much of our reality is that imagination or the interpretation, the isness,
Yeah.
So the electrical signals are interesting and valuable to an extent, but they're not going to make you grow as a person, like science, like you talked about religiosity before, like there's a kind of scientism that is obviously taken hold, and a whole materialistic vibe that is the main like bottleneck for stuff like psychedelic therapy is rampant, so I feel like using that science like angle to go back and say, well, look, this is what the word spirituality means, and this is what it can evolve into in your day-to-day existence. Like, look at everything around you that you don't see, that you can't touch, like love and loyalty and like just anything that's kind of connection based, anything that's kind of personal. All of these things are governing your life, foundational to your entire perspective and perception. and we just ignore it
Yeah.
as a culture, as a society.